So here's an oddball question I wanted to ask both of you guys. Have either of you, I know I'm pretty sure Phil has, I think you might have even done it today. Have you listened to any of Polly's? I mean, we're all pretty big X-Ray fans of the X-Ray Specs, right? X-Ray Specs album, obviously. But have either of you listened to any of her later post X-Ray Specs records, and what are your thoughts on them?
That's why I delayed. I was going to do all that today, but I didn't. I opted for the film instead. But I've heard them all. I have Translucence. I have a vinyl copy of it. I downloaded and they barely met. I don't think they even mentioned this in the film.
No, they don't mention it.
X-Ray Specs made a second album in 1995 where Laura Logic's back. I downloaded that. I downloaded the one that her solo album just before she died. And honestly, overall, when I listen to two songs from Translucence tonight, it sounds okay. It doesn't do a lot. There was one song from the second album that they used in the film when they had the reunion concert. It was called Crystal Clear, I think, and it actually sounded good in the film, but it didn't make a huge impression on me. Kirsty got liked both solo albums.
Yeah.
I'd have to agree in that, I've listened to them over the years. I don't have an impression. That probably means something about the impact they had on me. But there's also the fact that they wouldn't have had the cultural impact that X-Ray Specs did. So I'm probably going to overrate X-Ray Specs because they meant something to me, obviously a lot of people. And then the solo work, it was something, oh, look, I've listened to that, but it wasn't crucial importance to me. With Germ-Free Adolescence, I had a friend who loved imports. So he made me a tape of it pretty early on. Said, you should listen to this, because I think Old Bondage is all I'd heard by then.
Yeah.
And, that mattered. And that's nothing against anything she did as a solo artist. It's just that your moment comes in terms of that kind of impact. I wouldn't have written an entire article about her solo album. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I think I personally, I'll be honest, I think I overrate how much I like Germ-Free Adolescence based on two songs. I do that sometimes. That's why I'm not an album guy. If two songs mean a lot to me, then when I did one of those Facebook, not the one we did, Scott, but I did that Facebook album, one of those album things about 5 years ago, and I put Germ-Free Adolescence on. It was one of my 20 favorite albums. I think I played it 5 or 6 times in my life.
Really?
What I really love is The Day the World Turned Dayglow and Germ-Free Adolescence. Those songs.
Really?
And I try to conflate the whole album with them. And hearing all those other songs in the film, they all, they sound great. Like you say, she's obviously so animated when she sings them. I find a little bit of sameness to them, identity, artificial. There's another one like that. Let's Submerge sounds really good. I overrate it because of how much I love two songs, which is why I'm an album guy.
For me, it's almost the flip. There's maybe only 2 or 3 songs on that album I don't completely love, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've listened to that album endless amount of times, probably like top 10 British punk albums, like in terms of how often I've listened to it. Go ahead, Stephen. Sorry.
I was just going to say that the differences between the songs is in the lyrics, which are, I feel like, okay, maybe there's one I didn't get, but they seem to me to be universally excellent. And the songs kind of all blend together in terms of music. And
I was thinking just artificial. I am a cliche. I am a poser. There's a certain,
What about
that's like saying verse, chorus.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I meant
saxophone really makes it all sound the same.
I meant that they're all about being artificial.
Oh, I see.
I am a cliche is not on the original album, mind you, but
oh, okay. I think it's
neither was Old Bondage.
It's not. No, Old Bondage.
You have to get the reissue to get that on there.
And neither is that one that called Highly Inflammable, which I looked up tonight. It's a B-side of Warriors and Woolworths, the single.
I think in some ways my favorite moment from that record is in the song I Live Off You, which I think is really one of the catchier ones off the record. But to me, the perfect Poly Styrene moment is I think it's at the chorus, or maybe it's the part anywhere where she's singing, yeah, we're going to be exploited, or yeah, we're going to be exploited. And it's just so great. It's pure polystyrene, because it's like, how can you make it sounding like we're going to be exploited just be so much fun, right? Like it just sounds so fun. Like, yeah, we're going to be exploited. Like, if the Sex Pistols had done that, it would have sounded completely different, right? Like, I mean, Johnny Rotten would have still made it sound really fun, but in a different kind of way. And I just think that's the essence of X-Ray Specs. Like, they have this pure, it's just, you can almost take it as kind of silly pop music in some ways, and in a good way, I mean, because it's just so, it's so playful and colorful. But she's singing about being exploited by plasticity and all that stuff. So
I thought one of her daughter's funnier lines was just, how her mom was so anti-consumerist, but she was a shopaholic.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Did either of you think it mattered that she was so young when all this happened? Because that really struck me.
How young was she? She was,
she's like 18, 19.
19, I think. Yeah.
And
that sort of normal.
She's so canny, it seemed to me, about
I see.
constructing a person and about the lyrics that she wrote. But I think I mentioned in an email, I've been obsessing about Billie Eilish about this, because she's only just now turned 20, and for some reason I've decided that teenagers can't write lyrics. I don't know what I think.
Plastics.
So I'll make the one point, I don't think you'll disagree with this, just her relationship to feminism. She reminded me very much of like a Pauline Kael or a Susan Sontag, who clearly was such just a strong presence that she, or on the other side, I guess, Camille Paglia, who would be as feminist, strong in this sense of being strong, but would not want to be pinned down by that term, and would fight against it. Even her daughter said she didn't want to be described that way. And then I thought, well, this is what's terrible. That also brings those Poly Styrene and Pauline Kael and Susan Sontag. Who does that today? Of course, it's all the insane women on Fox who will say, oh yeah, we can't be pinned down by those terms. It's like they've taken on that mantle, which is obviously too bad. But she seems like sort of a Kael Sontag figure, larger than whatever. I mean, I don't want to diminish the importance of them. You know what I'm trying to say, I think. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, part of that may be, well, no, I guess your Kael point is well taken. I was going to say that part of that might be a little bit of the function of the times too. Like, I don't know if as many female performers back then were describing themselves in those terms. Although I'd be curious to know what the other like female post-punk bands of the time, because they were quite feminist, I think, in their
Pauline Black was one of the people that did some voiceover interview. She was a person of that same period, woman, person of color. What she had to say was interesting, but I'd like to know what she thought about the specific point.
She was from the singer of the Selector, right?
Yeah, I don't know their music at all, the Selector.
I know them a little bit. They were never quite as good as the English Beat or the Specials or something, but they're in that two-tone period or whatever. So
this is not the second point I wanted to make, but this is something I found out today that was sort of shocking. The two guys, when the band broke up, two of them went off and formed Classique Nouveau.
Okay.
One of those new romantic bands. Oh my God.
Okay, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because this is going to segue into the one thing I wanted to mention. And this is bizarre. I don't know if Stephen, you might have actually mentioned this somewhere. I read this on someone's blog like years ago. I don't think it was you, but I thought, I wonder if that was Steve. Okay, we're all fans of Rob Sheffield, and I had to look this up again, the Spin Guide. Have you ever read his X-Ray Specs recently? Do you remember?
I don't know.
I have that book. I've looked at him lately.
Okay, so this is one of the great, I don't want to call it trolls because that has such a negative tinge, one of the great like pranks of rock criticism in some ways. And yet I still don't know 100% if he thought he was reporting something real or if he was just making it up on purpose. But I think the guitar player's name in the band is Paul Dean. And here's
Yes,
what Sheffield writes. Where is it? And for years, I'm just going to say, I thought this was 100% true. And then I found out through someone's blog, it's complete bogus. So X-Ray Specs bassist Paul Dean went on to found the cheese metal band Loverboy. And I swear you can hear Poly Styrene smiling in the schlockerama hooks of Working for the Weekend and Hot Girls in Love. And there is a guy in Loverboy named Paul Dean. So
Paul Dean,
do you think Sheffield was pranking people?
Oh, I
Like,
think Rob
he
would
must
know.
have been, right?
Yeah.
But that's so funny.
No,
like how many people like me like read that? Thought, holy shit! Like he ended up in love.
That fits very much with my impression. When I read his first book, I was stunned, not because of how beautifully it was written, but my entire experience with him was not just the Spin Guide, but I think it was the second Rolling Stone album guide. It when you look at the initials of it almost seemed like they got halfway through and he said, do the rest. He does a lot. And he's very snarky. So in my mind, this was a snarky guy. I didn't mind, but I thought he was snarky. And then I read this book about a wife that he loved, and then she died. And oh my God, this is beautiful. And I've read every book since. I read books that he writes that I'm not even interested in the topic.
Yeah.
He wrote it. And yet that thing you just read, that was Rob Sheffield for the longest time. Was somebody who did something like that.
I'm sure that would have been an intentional joke.
I think that's great. It didn't seem completely off the radar to me, though. I mean, there's a lot of UK bands spent a lot of time in Canada and stuff like that. So it just
I've never heard Classique Nouveau, but I have a vague memory of them, and they just look
they're total new romantic, like early Spandau Ballet kind of stuff.
So I don't know how you make that connection, jumping from the one to the other.
Well, I think that was kind of common in the UK at that time. Yeah. To be honest with you, like I think that a lot of the post-punk, and I consider X-Ray Specs, they're kind of in some ways like the last punk band and the first post-punk band in a way.
Yeah,
like they kind of meld those two. But a lot of those bands sort of did make that, like the Human League, for instance, really started out as a more weird post-punk band. They didn't start out as a sort of pop electronic band. They were more like a jagged, hard to listen to post-punk thing. So there was that crossover into like the electronic stuff, right? So
they shared a compilation with Gang of Four, didn't they?
Yeah,
The Mekons, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to point, I don't know if I'm going to make this clear enough, but one thing I used to love talking about with my students was X-Ray Specs. I'd play that clip that I love, The Top of the Pops, Day of the World to Turn Day Glow. I don't know what even excuse. I think it was because I used to have X-Ray Specs as part of this slideshow on album cover art, which was an art assignment. And then I'd take time out and play certain songs by some of the bands in there. And the way I would always present them was that she was so different for 1978. You had this conception of female beauty, Linda Ronstadt, Stevie Nicks, et cetera, Olivia Newton-John, and she just flew in the face of that. She was black, she was Somalian, she wore braces, she wasn't modelish, to look at, and that was part of why she was so inspirational. But then watching the film, it's basically they almost say that what I was saying was it used to upset her, and I was taking a very cliched view of that, because that's what journalists would say about her. And she didn't like that. And her sister says, when she felt trapped by that when she was younger, she had a very a great degree of self-esteem and wasn't self-conscious about her looks. And only when journalists started saying the exact same things that I was saying, which to me, I thought I was presenting why she was so radical and all of that. So that was kind of weird for me to hear that I was saying exactly the things that seemed to be part of her confusion and subsequent downfall.
See, that's part of the trickiness of biography, though, right? Like, I don't personally think that in some ways negates anything you were saying, really. Like, you got that impression from the music itself and maybe some things you've read of her and seen clips of her or whatever.
Right.
So I think that's completely 100% genuine. Like it's and both are true. Like, yeah,
And I'm sure that's
the real
partly why-
person as conveyed by her daughter, or whatever. Yes, that's not in any way true. But if
Right.
you're a fan of her music and you're struck by a certain part of it, or certain impression you get, I wouldn't negate that impression. And now it's going to shape maybe your impression going forward, because now so maybe it will. But I just think that's where biography becomes kind of tricky, right? The more you learn about these people, it does kind of sway the way you might hear their stuff. And I'm not always convinced that it's a positive thing for that to happen. I don't know if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly. I don't know.
Right. I'm sure that what I just said, though, that's part of why you wanted Ava to watch it, right? Because
not necessarily.
No? Okay.
Well, I mean, it's partly that. I mean, first of all, it's just a romantic notion, and but more is just I'm going through a thing where I'm not sure if it's hard to sort of, from my view, I should say. I know she's got her own world. She's living in her own world in many ways, but I'm just not seeing her connect to a lot of stuff in general.
Oh, okay.
So I just thought something might catch her, it might not. And I actually knew there was going to be some stuff about, her struggles with depression and all that sort of stuff. And I even thought that would be like, you might see this person who you find inspirational, and you'll see a well-rounded story. I just thought it might be something interesting. Of course, as the romanticizing father, I would have thought, it wouldn't be great if she liked the music, but I know that's a folly. And yeah, she wasn't interested right now. Maybe at some future date she will.
Right.
But no, it was partly for that. I'm sure what you're saying is partly, even subconsciously, what I may have been thinking. Like, yeah, why wouldn't I think she'd be a really inspirational person, just doing something like, completely unique and whatever.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Anyway,
Glad in watching this. I mean, it's glad's the wrong word, because her trials and tribulations are very sad. But throughout, I got the feeling this is a good person.
oh yeah, definitely.
Good person when she was young. She was a good person when she died, and every time in between. She had her problems and whatever. The reason I especially liked it is I had just finished a biography a friend wrote about Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter Thompson was not a good person. I mean, that's no big surprise, I suppose. But just having page after page of what he was like in real life, then to go back and read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, it might be a little different. And from this movie, what I thought was, I got to go listen to Term Free Adolescence, because I like this person. I already liked the music, but I like this person. And I wasn't sorry that was the feeling I got from the picture.
Yeah,
So
I was almost going to say there's not a moment in the film where you think, wow, she actually did that or said that. But then I realized there's at least one where her daughter talks about, her as a mom. And I think she said she pushed her down the staircase once.
Mhm.
She forgave her and she understood there was a lot going on. But other than that, I don't know if there's anything in the film where you think negatively of her.
Phil, were you sort of saying that? I am curious about that. So are you sort of suggesting that by the way you're sort of, or have been sort of characterizing her, like you almost feel that like maybe it's a bit exploitive or something almost, because that's how is that
In
sort
a
of what you're
way,
saying?
almost, yeah. That
Okay.
I was focusing on the fact that she wore braces and the fact that she was from Somalia, and that she didn't want to be thought of that way. And again, it goes back to what Stephen said. The film talks about her creating this character, Poly Styrene. So I guess I had my own idealized image of what made her interesting, and it might not match up with her version of herself.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely a striking contrast to the female pop stars of 1978.
I think of this not just in music, any celebrity, a top athlete, anything. If there's someone that a large group of people admire, then how they look or how they dress or how they do their hair, that's good, because we like that person for whatever they're doing in whatever field. And so therefore, polystyrene is beautiful. Why? Because she's polystyrene. She makes this great record. To me, that's where it starts. And I think the same thing, like I say, about a baseball player or anybody. It's like when you realize that some people are going to want to be like that person. And that means, among other things, they might want to look like that person. So to them, obviously, that person is beautiful. And I think in her case, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were photographs in the film where she looked more conventionally beautiful.
Yeah, it's true.
As opposed to where they'd have the one guy that was interviewing her. And she had a great laugh. Like every time the guy asked a question, and you knew she was going to laugh. He said, "So are you a rebel or whatever?" And she get that kind of mischievous grin on her face. There, she was really accentuating her braces and a totally different look. So where's the truth? I don't know, somewhere in there. I thought of one very famous photograph, though, just to get to your point, Scott, about the use of photographs, and my point about I would like to have known, did she have a friendship with all these women? I'm sure you've seen that photograph of her with Pauline Black and Airy Up from the Slits. There's about 4 or 5 iconic women from that moment. And that photograph wasn't used in the film, which to me pushes back against the idea that she was such an outsider. Maybe she had ongoing friendships with all these women.
Yeah, it's true. You didn't get that context at all. And I think you're right, like that it would have been nice to see it. I mean, if we're not the movie they're looking for, but yeah, like, and it ties in a little bit just too with, I'm curious what propelled her to do this in the first place, aside from seeing the Sex Pistols, but
I had to wonder, as a filmmaking device, they had that great shot of her, 1976, in a concert hall, and then they had John Lydon singing. Is that the same show, or did they match?
See, that's what I think, Steve. I assume that's kind of like they're trying to create the impression of it happening, and I don't know. I'm starting to get weary of seeing that and I think they did that a few times, like when they're describing her father. And by the way, I saw a lot of resemblance between her and her father too. They had one photograph of him, and you could really see the face, the shape of her face and stuff was right out of him. But then they described her father as being a really dapper dresser, and they had a picture. And I don't even know if it was her father. Like it was like, I shouldn't say it. Maybe I should be careful about that. But it was like, it didn't seem to me like it seemed like they were describing the scene or something. I don't know. Maybe I'd have to go back to that. But it seemed a bit. Is this an insertion or is this real? Because they're describing a dance. I think it's because they were describing a dance club or something. Like, do they have footage at the dance club? I don't know. Do you remember
what
that?
The fake is? Oh, I do. I remember that. You know what the fakest thing of all was? So fake that I think it may have even actually been meant as a joke, like the kind of thing you'd find in the Ruddles or something, where her solo album Translucence flops and the record company's not happy. They cut to a shot of her receiving a phone call.
She
looks really downcast. Like they were there when the company broke the news to her. We're cutting you loose, Polly. It was laughable, and I think it was intentionally laughable.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, filmmaking devices.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got in my last 2 points.
I don't want to forget this, so I'll say it because that way I'll remember. About did she hang out with these other people? Viv Albertine of the Slits wrote a couple of autobiographies.
Yeah.
And I have it. I'm going to look them
That's a good point. I've got one of those.
If she's in there, because
I'd be interested.
Might come up.
Maybe Scott. I know we're doing a lot less of the production that you used to do. Maybe you work that one photograph in.
Yeah, I wonder what. Yeah, that's got to be. Yeah, that'll be easy to find.
It's very easily available. Somebody I used to teach with posted it on Facebook 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
okay.
Well, that was good, you guys.
Yeah, thanks. That was fun.
Yep.
I'm glad I watched the movie. I mean, didn't blow me away, but it's about Poly Styrene. It's interesting on that, those merits alone. So
Yeah, I think it'll definitely show up on year-end lists. Not so much I think it came out last year, but it didn't really have much of a chance to find an audience. I think you'll see it on various year-end lists. That the Armand White liked it. You should read. I know, like you, Stephen, I can't stand him, but you should read that review. It's just kind of interesting because he comes up with all this stuff. You know, he
Focus,
again,
does he focus on the Krishna, the Hare Krishna stuff probably, or?
no, he liked it, but he uses everything as a a hammer against something else. So he would say how she's a heroine, and I guess he probably made the point that I did, that she didn't have to call herself a feminist. Anyway, he pits her against Neil Young for some reason, because that's the story of the moment, that she wouldn't, basically as much as saying she wouldn't have time for such silliness. And I think she'd be, I think, again, you get the sense of her being a very so intelligent and so conscious. I think she would have absolutely pulled her music from Spotify. I don't doubt for a second she would be front of the line to do that.
No, they pulled the band's music except for the live album from 2008.
Well, the germ-free adolescence is gone. That is, I mean, stuff like that just happens. I guess those are label things.
Well, like I sent you an email today, her two solo
albums. Her solo albums are there, but germ-free adolescence was there a few months ago. I've listened to it many times on Spotify, and it just suddenly gone. But that could just be a label thing. Like Trout Mask Replica has never been on Spotify yet. Other Captain Beefheart albums.
I think for him to position her, she's here. And
that's
all these. It's ridiculous, But that's his,
and it's just so irrelevant anyway. Like
it's irrelevant. I know.
I do wonder where her music would have gone if she didn't have that lapse in her. Like she did keep doing music, but if it had just been a more sort of normal trajectory, the band stayed together and stuff, it's kind of fascinating to think of where they would have ended up, right? Well, I could see her going the Nina Cherry route or something, like more into dance music and hip hop and stuff like that. Who knows?
Or could they have caught on, like, think of all the Human Leagues that just ended up having major success. Would they have been a Cars or a Human League? I don't think so. But, who knows?
Well, they would have developed as a band and continued to write catchy songs and stuff. So who knows, right? So.
Yeah.